Hi, and welcome to the Days Gone podcast. I'm Claire Weaver, a screenwriter, author, and Days Gone fan, and this podcast is a place to discuss the game in all its glory, share my opinions, both popular and unpopular, and listen to me fangirl over one of the best games ever made. There will be spoilers ahead, so continue at your own risk. Welcome to the Freak Show. In this episode, I want to get a little technical and lean into my photography background to discuss Photomode, what it is, how to get the best images, and what else it can be useful for besides taking awesome shots of the game. Joining me in this discussion is Mike Padua, an avid gamer, photographer, and contributing writer for Popular Photography magazine. And of course, he also happens to be a big fan of Days Gone. Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Hello, Claire. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Let's get straight into it. Days Gone. How many times have you played it? What's your favorite thing about it? Why do you love it?
Oh, God.
Get to the important questions first.
The answer to all those questions is yes. No, oh gosh. I am in my third playthrough. My first playthrough was obviously like a normal game. I did my second playthrough. Oh, and then I played it for a couple of months where I was just resetting all the camps and the hordes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a new game plus, did the story the whole way through again. And then I'm in my third playthrough right now where I am basically just starting fresh in Survival 1 and just starting, not new game plus, just just starting fresh with nothing. So
why Survival 1 and not Survival 2?
Because I'm a little bit of a weenie.
You just got a little bit scared at the last second.
Honestly, I'm not the best at this type of game. Even though I've put something like a total of 300 hours into this game, my dexterity is still a little clumsy, and I'm just really not. I'm really not the greatest at these kinds of games, so I just kind of step the difficulty a little bit instead of going straight into Survival 2. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure what the difference is between Survival 1 and Survival 2.
I was just about to say that. I was just thinking, I don't know what the difference is. Because in Survival, you don't have the minimap or any of like the heads-up display or anything like that. Do you have it in Survival 1? You don't have the minimap, right?
No, that's correct, yeah.
Right, so I think it takes all that away, but I guess the difference between the two then would be the health and the damage of the enemies. So like they're slightly easier to kill in Survival 1 versus Survival 2, and they deal slightly less damage in Survival 1 versus Survival 2.
That sounds way too hard for me. And in fact, it was like, I was even hesitant to go above normal because the game still scares me. I'm still screaming. I love horror movies and stuff, and I love this game, and but when the music comes on, when a horde is approaching, my heart still starts to race. When I'm listening to your podcast and that intro music comes on, it's like, oh my God, why is my heart racing right now?
You're like, oh no, a horde. Oh wait, it's just the podcast.
Oh, it's just the podcast.
Yeah, I was looking for the music to put on the intro, and of course I was like, I've got to find the horde music. That's got to be the one. So what's your favorite thing about the game?
Gosh, I think the thing that sticks out to me are, and I know this is kind of a broad thing, but the characters. When you think about a game, like an open world game, a lot of, like, for example, Skyrim, there are hundreds of NPCs and I will never remember one of their names. That's not the case in Days Gone. There are, I don't know, 6 or 7 really important characters. They're all fleshed out. You've talked about this on your podcast before, but characters like Schizo, we all know a Schizo. Every character in the game reminds me of someone over the course of my life. Boozer reminds me of my brother. Deacon reminds me of one of my best friends from high school who I still chat with in a group chat every day. Iron Mike reminds me of my PE teacher who was also my math teacher in high school. And, all these characters are just really fleshed out. In this latest playthrough, one thing that I've really, really appreciated are the facial animations. The facial animations are just through the roof. I don't know if I'm going on too much of a tangent here or getting too nerdy, but there's a scene with Ricky where it's the scene where Deacon is stealing the antibiotics from the infirmary.
Where he gets caught and she pulls a gun on him.
That's exactly the scene I'm talking about. So in this scene, there's a 10-second portion where Deacon pulls the gun on Ricky, and then Ricky kind of calls him on his bullshit, and there's this incredulous look on her face, and then that look turns into defiance, and then that look turns into like this stone cold, ice piercing stare where she's, she says to Addie, check what's in the box, and she doesn't take her eyes off of Deacon this whole time, and her facial expressions change like 4 times over the course of 10 seconds. And that scene just amazed me. I mean, they're all amazing scenes. They're amazing actors. But that scene just really stood out to me. So the facial animations, that's the long version. The facial animations are great. And then also the narrative. I really love the narrative, how it's an open world game, but you don't get lost in 30 hours of side quests only to forget what the main quest is. Like, again, looking at games like Skyrim or Fallout, I love those games. I love those games so much, but I get lost in hours upon hours of side quests. I don't even remember what the main quest was.
I gave up on Assassin's Creed Odyssey because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. There's just so many different quests that you're on, and I'm like, just tell me a story. I don't know where I am in the story. There's too much to do.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's great if you're looking to squeeze a game like a sponge. I love that. But what I really appreciated about this game was that everything tied back to the main story. You do a couple of side quests, it's back to the main story. And then a couple more side quests opens up, and then you're back to the main story.
Even the side quests don't feel separate from the story. Like, I think it wasn't until my 3rd playthrough that I really noticed that there is a difference, that you can, I mean, I knew you could skip some things, but that I really realized that you can skip the ambush camps and the marauder missions and all of that. You can skip them. I just never thought to, because they are presented as part of the story, because it's the camps that are giving you the jobs, and it's the camps that you're working for, and the camps are tied up with the story, except for the Nero missions. But Ricky calls you and says, hey, we've got a job for you. It's for Lost Lake. Everything in the story you're doing is for Lost Lake.
It all ties back.
Yeah, it feels integral. It feels like it's integrated.
Yeah, I don't recall any side missions that didn't feel relevant to the main story. Even though they were side offshoot missions, they all felt relevant. They all felt important. And I felt like I had to do all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's all about the relationships. The whole game, the story is about relationships, but the game itself is about building the relationships with the camps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's get into photography. I mentioned in my intro, I studied photography in college many, many years ago. I put on a couple gallery shows, and it was my way into a very brief stint as a fashion model. Honestly, I always preferred to be behind the camera instead of in front of it. My favorite subject that I like to shoot was architecture and landscapes, which is probably why most of my Days Gone photos are of the mountains and the lakes and the landscape. Talk to me about your photography and what your favorite subject is to shoot.
So my professional photography, I shoot right now. Most of my business are theatrical productions and musicals. And so the way that works is I get hired by a theater company, and then I'll go to what is usually their final dress rehearsal and shoot from curtain to curtain. So from the beginning to the end of the play. And then that theater company will use those promotional images, for, obviously to promote on social media, for brochures and posters and stuff like that. I don't do this much anymore, but I used to shoot production stills on movie and television sets.
Cool.
It's been, it's been, I think 6 years since I've been on a movie set. So it's been a long time. I have 2 kids. They're 10 and 6. So when that started to ramp up a little bit, I had these 2 little kids, and I was like, I don't want to travel so much. So I'm going to transition away from that a little bit.
being on a movie set is like 12, 14, 16-hour days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like without fail, sometime sometimes 7 days a week, depending on how much we have to crunch. But yeah, they are long days.
They're brutal.
Yeah.
I've done it. I've been there, done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do for fun photography-wise? What do you like to shoot?
I just shoot pictures of my family. That's pretty much it. Like if you look in my Lightroom catalog, in my archives of pictures, it's all just like, here's my daughter with the dog, here's my son with the hamster. It's just like, it's all my wife, my two kids, our two dogs, the places we travel to. And that is easy, because that's my life, outside of work. My life and is pretty much my family, my wife and my kids. So that's what I shoot.
You live near San Francisco, right?
Yeah, just north. Yeah, just north of San Francisco.
You posted some images on your Instagram the other day that I actually shared to the Days Gone podcast Instagrams. I thought they were so cool. All the foggy pictures, because I know San Francisco gets really good fog.
Yeah. So we are right on the Carquinez Strait, which is basically an offshoot of this of right near the San Francisco Bay, and it gets super foggy, and yeah, it's just beautiful, like really beautiful in the morning. So sometimes I'll leave it a little early just to shoot some pictures of the fog outside before it burns off.
And you shoot on film over digital. Do you do that exclusively or just when you can?
I don't do it exclusively, but I shoot film probably, I'd say 2/3 of the time, and I prefer film because of the tactile process. I still, I like to use a pencil and a notepad. I still, instead of like typing notes in my phone, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
just sick of looking at my phone screen all day. So I like tactile things. I have a vinyl collection. I listen to records, and I have a comic book collection. I like things that I can hold in my hand, and with film, that's kind of how that process is. I love digital photography too. I really do. Like, you can make some amazing images with today's technology. But it's just kind of a different process for me, where I'll go out with one roll of film and shoot 24 or 36 pictures over the course of a day, instead of shooting like 300 pictures with my digital camera.
Yeah.
I'm psychologically, I'm a little bit more precious about it. So that's what I appreciate about it.
It also forces you to be a little more selective, put a little more
Yes.
thought.
Yeah.
You're not
definitely.
taking 50 pictures to get one good shot. You only have like 2, 3 maybe that you
Yeah,
can spare.
definitely. I'm definitely more precious about it. Definitely just more careful about it.
Yeah.
And it looks great too. Like, you can make a digital image look like film with some work, but when a film picture kind of already looks that way right out of the box, if you will, it looks cool. Plus, I like having the negatives. I like having binders of negatives, and it's just really enjoyable. That just, again, that tactile, really tangible feeling of that process. I love it.
Yeah. Do you develop your own film or do you send that off somewhere?
I do, yeah. I develop my own black and white film at home,
Mm-hmm.
but I send out my color film because that uses different chemicals. And the thing with color is your temperature, it's less forgiving. Your temperature has to be right on.
Mm-hmm.
Your water temperature. With black and white, if you're off a couple of degrees up and down, it's not a big deal. With color, it's more of a big deal. So
Yeah.
and plus time too. I have 2 little kids. I wish I had more time, but I just don't.
Yeah. Now, you run an awesome store that is all about photography, and you have some awesome stuff in that. Can you tell us a little bit about your store?
Yeah. So again, that just kind of grew from a passion, much like your podcast. I got really passionate about film photography, like the analog processes of photography. So, it started with one silly little, like an embroidered patch. And then I just made more and more items. And then that kind of became pins and t-shirts. And my latest release is a camera strap that is made from this synthetic. It's not leather. It's like this really strong synthetic material that feels really nice. It's like super flexible, and yeah, I started that in 2015, and it just kind of grew. It was a silly little passion project that grew and grew and grew, and I had no idea it was going to grow that big.
I love it. I love the stuff that you have, like the t-shirts and the kind of fun designs and everything, like the little, I don't say puns, but however you describe it, like little word plays and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and you've probably seen a lot of it as horror themed too. I love
Hmm.
horror. I love horror themed stuff. Obviously, with our love for Days Gone, I just love all of it.
Yeah. Where can people find your store?
It's shootfilmco.com.
Awesome. All right, let's get into photo mode.
Yeah,
Photo mode it's a fun feature that's been around in video games for a while, but I gotta say I only started noticing it in the past, I don't know, 6 years or so. And I think it really took off once sharing from your console became a lot easier. How would you describe what photo mode is?
So I'm like you. I only really started to notice it. In the early years, it was like a novel thing that I really didn't bother with that much. But in the past couple of years, with specifically with Days Gone and the Spider-Man game that came out in 2018, that my 6-year-old son is way into. Like, he's gotten way into photo mode, and he'll have my wife text me in the middle of the day and say, "Hey, John wanted to show you this," like while I'm at work,
Oh.
So, but yeah, it's just a way to creatively capture what you're seeing at that moment in the game through basically your own lens and your own perspective. And it's only with these latest crop of games the past couple of years where those photo modes have gotten really, really advanced with these really like deep settings that
Mm.
are really, I've never seen settings as deep as they have been with Days Gone. Like, I mean, Days Gone is the game I've spent the most amount of time with. So I'm sure other games have really deep photo mode settings, but the settings in Days Gone are pretty deep and really pretty impressive.
Yeah, I want to go into some of the settings because there are a lot of photography terms that are used
Sure,
and ones
yeah.
that I recognize. And then there are some that I'm like, I don't know what the difference is between these two things, or I don't know, what this word means. Like things that even, I studied photography and I still don't know what this is. So I wonder if we can run through some of those. But let's start with your favorite settings or cool effects that can be achieved. What is like the best thing to do with photo mode?
So what I like to do is I basically, because I kind of characterize it as an action game. So I always try to pause it at those pivotal moments where it's kind of at the peak of action where, like, for example, a runner is about to bite you, or a bear is about to knock you over, or a horde is right on your ass. It's like I always think of like movie posters. Like when I was shooting production stills on movie and television sets, one of the best pieces of advice I got is that anybody can take a pretty picture of a pretty person on a pretty set with pretty lighting. But if you can capture a relationship or you can capture an emotion, then that's what people want to see. That's what is impactful to people. So I
Mm.
love, you know, um, like when you're, those long walks with Tucker or Iron Mike or whatever. Like I always try to capture those moments too. So I'm always thinking like in terms of like a movie poster.
Yeah, kind of telling a story with a single
Exactly.
image.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a few of the settings that I want to talk through. Let's start with aperture. So this is, something I use. I play about with the aperture a lot. I like the really shallow depth of field where you have something in the foreground or a certain distance away from the camera that is in focus, and setting the aperture and the focal depth so that everything else is out of focus. So you can really draw attention to one particular thing and have everything else kind of not draw the eye.
Right.
Do you use the aperture a lot? Do you play about with that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it is. I always, when you're looking at a picture, you're always trying to draw your viewer's eye to a certain spot. You never want to assume that just because, like, okay, like Deacon's in the middle of the frame, but like if there's just a beautiful mountain behind him, it might be distracting from what you actually want your viewer to see. So aperture is kind of a weird one, because if you're not into photography, a smaller number means a larger aperture. That means less is in focus. So if you're, I think the default aperture when you turn on photo mode is 1.4. So that's a large aperture. That means Deacon's going to be in focus. The mountain behind him is going to be blurry. With a higher number or a smaller aperture, but let's just say a higher number like 22, everything's going to be in focus. Deacon's going to be in focus. The mountain's going to be in focus. The clouds are going to be in focus. So yeah, that's kind of how you can control that. And like you said, if you're wanting to draw your eye to a subject, like for example, a portrait, if you Google portrait, a lot of examples are going to be sharp eyes, sharp face, and then everything behind it is blurry. And that's just, really draws your eye. It just, and it can be really beautiful too. That's just kind of inherent in a lot of portraits, is that it really draws your eye to the subject.
Yeah, I like to do it when it's, you use the word beauty. I like to do it when it's something that's kind of brutal, but just as a contrast, so you like blur out the sort of because I mean, the problem with Days Gone is everything is pretty. The landscape behind every mountain is gorgeous and is going to draw your eye.
Right.
The way the light comes through the trees or the fog or the stars, like everything, the moonrise, everything is fucking gorgeous. So it's almost like you have to use that. When I use the term small depth of field, I mean like having just a single thing in focus and everything else like blurred.
Yes.
You kind of have to do that to get rid of a lot of the beauty, so that your eye isn't just shooting all over the place.
Yeah, you're getting rid of those distractions.
Yes, distractions. And I love to create like a real nice shot that is, of like the boot knife in Deacon's hand covered in blood or something like that, and just like highlight that and set it up so you have this beautiful world in the background, but I'm blurring that out and I'm just drawing attention just to this one moment of brutality, of like he's just stabbed something to death and it's just so nasty and visceral, and it's like dripping, his hand is dripping with blood. That kind of thing I think is really impactful, and a good use of the small depth of field to draw your eye to that one little thing, that one little detail.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I didn't know that you could zoom in and capture such detail until I started seeing other people doing it. I was always trying to capture like big scenes and stuff. I literally never thought to like zoom way in and where you can see the pores of Deacon's face. You can see every wrinkle on a screamer's face. Like you can see literally every line. I didn't know you could do that until pretty recently, when I started looking at other people's, other artists' photographs.
Yeah. Quick question. Do you play on PS4, PS5, PC?
I play on PS5. I just got a PS5 last September.
Nice.
Yeah. My first 2 playthroughs, though, I played on PS4.
Yeah, because I'm on PS4, so sometimes like I'll set up a good shot, and it's like the graphics just aren't quite what I want it to be. Like aren't quite as good as they would be on PC or on the PS5.
Yeah, still pretty impressive, but when you're like zooming way in, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll get one eventually. Let's talk about color grading. This is one of the settings you can change. I don't know exactly how to use it to best effect. Explain it to me, please.
Yeah, so color grading is basically you are manipulating the tint of certain parts of the image. And so this is where this confused me for the longest time. There's 3 settings. There's gamma, gain, and offset. So what that means is gamma means your midtones of an image. So basically, your green mountains, Deacon's jacket and jeans, those are all kind of the midtones of an image. The offset portion of an image are the shadows, the darkest part. Like, for example, the shadows you cast, like if the sun's setting, your bike's casting a long shadow, you have those shadows. It's the darkest parts of the image. The gain are the lightest parts of an image. So you can control those all independently, and you can change the color of, for example, you can use your offset. You can make that warm and brown. So your shadows are going to be warm and brown and kind of yellowish reddish. And then you can use your gain and you can make that kind of cooler blue. And that's just another trick to kind of not only stylize the image, but kind of draw your eye to certain things. If you look at a lot of movies, a lot of the color grading that you're going to see is a lot of teal and orange. And it kind of became a meme, sort of. It kind of became really cliche to make things like teal and orange, but you can use that to kind of, again, great effect to just really draw your eye to certain parts of an image. Um, and, and, um, and yeah, just kind of make things a little bit more unique looking and a little bit more like stylized and artistic looking.
That's really cool. I'm going to play about with that, because one thing that kind of frustrates me about the game and using photo mode in the game, and this is maybe because I especially seem to always play at night, like it just always seems to be nighttime when I'm in the game. Everything has like either a brownish green or a blue gray color to it.
Right.
And everything seems to be kind of samey. So I'll set up a really good shot, but Deacon's clothing, his jacket and, his sleeves and everything, have like a very sort of brownish green color. And then, he's standing in a field and the field will be brownish green, or the trees are green, or, there isn't really a lot of difference in color. And then if you go into like darker areas, everything has a very, very gray blue tone.
Exactly. So you can split those up. Kind of color grading 101, and this is just super basic, is the first thing I would try is adjust the offset and make that warmer. So your reds and yellows, you can make your offset kind of warmer, and then adjust your gain to be cooler. So like blues and greens. And you can see how the image kind of, you may have heard this tone before. The image kind of split tones. It's not all just kind of one wash of gray or one wash of blue. Like the darks and the lights kind of, those colors diverge from one another. So that's where the first thing I would start is make your shadows, your offset, kind of a warmer color, and then make your gain, which is your brighter areas of the image, make those kind of cooler and, blues, greens.
I can't wait to try that. I can already see it.
Yeah, definitely. And it, it just kind of gives you some variety too, because, we play these games for hours and hours and hours, and these colors get burned in our minds. So when you have the creative freedom to change those things to your eye a little bit, then it's really, it just can be really beautiful what you can come up with, even if sometimes it's an accident. It's like, oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Let's talk about bloom. This is a term I don't know, but I am going to take a guess that it's to do with flare around lights, maybe?
That's exactly what it is. So
yes, 10 points.
So it's not, yeah, exactly, 10 points. So it's the flare, but it's not the circular reflective lens flare that we think of when like, for example,
J.J.
Abrams. Right, exactly.
Yes.
It's not that flare. It's exactly what you said. It's the flare around a light source. Like, for example, you're looking at a mountain, and the sun is behind that mountain, and the sky behind that mountain is really bright. And so the light from behind that mountain kind of blooms. So that's why
it's a glow. It's a soft
glow. Exactly. And you're going to notice that there's a bloom 1 and a bloom 2. That's because in nature, when you're photographing something, there is the first bloom is pretty distinct, and then the second bloom falls off a little bit more gently. So you can kind of adjust that to have so that it's not, so that second bloom falls off a little bit more gently, and that it's not so sudden. Or you can do it so that bloom is really crazy and really vivid, and the background looks really like kind of foggy. And again, you could do that to draw your eye to your subject. You can do that to kind of obscure things in the background.
Without taking it out of focus, but you take the sharpness away almost.
That's right. Yeah. We're getting super nerdy here. You know what? If you lose subscribers, I'm sorry, Claire.
No, this is great because I think a lot of people don't know this about photo mode. I mean, like I said, I've studied photography. You'd think I would know this stuff, but I don't know what half of it means. I don't really remember learning all of this.
And you know what's interesting is a lot of this stuff has to do more with video editing than it does photography.
Right.
In recent years, programs like Photoshop and Lightroom, they've adopted more of the color grading tools that you find in photo editing.
Mhm.
Like, for example, just I think a couple of years ago in Lightroom, and which is like a kind of variation of Photoshop. Basically, it's an Adobe product. They just added a color grading wheel, very similar to the one you see in Days Gone, and it's the kind of thing that you've seen in video editing software for years now. So those things are kind of merging, but like a lot of this stuff has to do comes from the video editing world.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. I feel like this is really going to help my listeners really appreciate the things that you can do in photo mode, because you see, we're going to get into some of the community members who create great artwork out of video games. We'll get into that in a little bit. But sometimes I see these images and I'm like, damn, that is so fucking cool. And I have no idea how to do that. My images are good enough, but I think knowing what all of these settings do will really elevate our ability to create awesome fucking images. So I think everyone listening to this is probably already loading up the PlayStation, ready to get into photo mode to like figure out how can they make awesome images.
Yeah, yeah. And one of my first tips is like, we all love games, we all love movies. The next time you see a movie and you go, wow, that looks awesome, pause it and ask yourself, what looks awesome about that? Or, and what you're going to notice is the shadows, the darkest parts of the image are going to have a certain tint to them. Are they warm? Are they yellow or red? Are they cool? Are they, blue or green? Are they orange? And then, the highlights are going to have their own tint to them. So just kind of, notice like, wow, that looks really cool. Again, that teal and orange thing, which became so cliche for so many years. The reason it became cliche is because it looks kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much every action movie for the last 10, 15 years has that teal and orange vibe going on.
Yeah. And it does, you can get burnt out on it, but I mean, start from there, experiment with that and then start from there. And then that jumping off point, you can make it your own.
And that's the great thing about photo mode is it has all these settings, but there really aren't that many. It's not too overwhelming that if you're just playing about with the color grading, you're just, moving the offset from one end of the scale to the other and the gain from one end of the scale to the other just to see. You can just very quickly like scroll through and find a place where you're like, ooh, that's starting to look good.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Another trick too, also in the photo mode menu, is the depth color grading. And what that means is the stuff that is closer to your eye, you can tint that differently than the stuff that is far away, because we're playing in a 3D space. It's not just a flat picture. Mm-hmm. So, because we have the benefit of this game engine that is creating this 3D space, the stuff that is closer to you, you can tint a certain color, or you can lighten it, you can darken it. And the stuff that is far away from you, you can also tint a different color, or you can lighten it and you can darken it. And that's what those depth settings are. Again, just, the story that you're telling or where you want to direct a viewer's eye, it's just another tool for that.
Question for you. Saturation and vibrancy. What is the difference? Because those are the two that I play about with the most, and I actually don't know what the difference between it is.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's like they're very, very closely related, and they can be depending on the scene, sometimes they look like they're doing the same thing. But this is the way I look at it. Vibrance, when you slide that up and down, vibrance tends to protect skin tones. So it will, like, for example, if you've got a person in your scene, let's say, again, our hero Deacon, he's got his jacket, his jeans. If you bump up the vibrance, his clothes and the surrounding areas like the mountains are going to come up in saturation. but his skin won't turn orange. His skin is still going to have a natural hue to it, because vibrance kind of almost intelligently protects things that are already very saturated. So it kind of doesn't touch things that are very saturated. It just brings up the things that are not so saturated. Saturation, on the other hand, just brings up everything. So if you bump up your saturation, all your reds are going to be red, or more red. Your greens are going to be greener. Your blues are going to be bluer. Your characters' skins are going to be more red and more orange, which you don't necessarily want that. So that's the difference between the two.
Yeah, I usually pair it together. I actually bump the saturation down a couple notches and then the vibrancy up like 4 or 5 or 6, depending on what I'm taking a photo of.
Yeah, see, that's a great trick. You're kind of letting your eye guide you. But from a technical standpoint, that's what they do. It's just the vibrance, it saturates things that aren't quite so saturated, but protects the things that are already pretty saturated. So, but yeah, doing a combo of those and letting your eye guide you, that's a great idea.
Tint and Gamma. I feel like you've already explained what Gamma is.
Those are in the color grading things. Those are kind of like in like under, like, let's, for example, your gamma. Those are the midtones of the image. Most of your colors live in gamma. So when you bring up your gamma, it's going to brighten most of the image. But let's say, for example, you've got the sun in the background. It's not going to bring that up anymore because the sun doesn't live in gamma, because the sun's already the brightest part of the image. The gamma is just the midtones. I don't know if I'm making sense here. I hope I am.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. But again, it's like it's separated by gamma, gain, and offset. Gamma is the middle, kind of the gray tones of the image. The gain are the brightest parts of the image, and the offset are the darkest parts of the image. And within that, you can adjust the tint of each of those. You can adjust the tint of your offset, or your shadows. You can adjust the tint of your gamma, which is your midtones. Like, for example, a tree. The green of a tree, that's a midtone. That's gamma. And then let's say a bright sunny sky, that's your gain. You can adjust the tint of that, and you can adjust those all independently of each other.
That's awesome. Okay, Vignette. You want to explain? I feel like a lot of people are going to know what this is from using Instagram.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, it's
you want to
really
explain
simple.
what it was before Instagram? It's
simple. Yeah, the corners of an image, you can make them darker or lighter. And again, that's a tool that photographers have used for decades or maybe even centuries, actually, to kind of draw your eye to the center of an image. And that's just like a holdover from. It's actually a fault of certain lenses. When a lens is kind of too small for an image circle, then the corners of an image will be darker. Mm-hmm. So, and that's pretty much all that Vignette is. It just kind of darkens or lightens the corners of an image.
Cool. And that's for, like you say, the effect of using that is to draw the eye inward to whatever you're trying to kind of soften the edges, so it's not just like an abrupt kind of edge, sharp corners and everything. It sort of softens it to make your eye naturally fall into the middle.
Right, fall into the middle, yeah. And the way I tell it's kind of easy to get carried away with that setting.
I always go overboard.
Yeah, oh yeah, me too. I still go overboard. But what I tell people is make the corners dark, and make them dark to the point where you think it's a little too much, and then back them off just a little away from that. So that's always what I tell people is just go to the point where you think it's too much and then back it off a little, because you don't want to distract people with it. You don't, because if there's too much of it, you're just going to draw your eye to it. It's like people are going to think that the corners of your image are going to be artificially dark. You don't really want that.
It's like when people use frames. You have the preset frames that you can use in photo mode. I never use those because they take my eye off the image. And they also do like weird cropping as well.
They do, yeah. I mean, they're kind of novel to look through, but I always just turn them off. Like I always just want to see the image itself. And it's cool that there are so many frames and they're kind of novel and some of them are kind of funny, But at the end of the day, I just turn those off because they're just distracting.
Yeah, the only one I really like is the one that's the mask, the Nero mask, which is
the reflection.
the reflection. It's so distracting because every time I see it, I'm like, how did you get a photo of a Nero soldier like that close? And, oh no, wait, it's that frame. That's what it is.
Yeah. And then again, I think that one's cool because it's very movie posterish.
Right.
It's the kind of thing that you'd see on a movie poster.
Yeah. All right, let's talk for a second about how to get the photos off the PlayStation, because this is something that people struggle with. It's a question that comes up quite often on the subreddit that I moderate, and I want to just basically give the people the two different ways you can get the images off of your PlayStation. The first one is fairly straightforward. Stick a USB drive in the front and literally copy your images. Go into the gallery on your PlayStation menu, copy the images onto the USB.
Yep.
Time consuming, but fairly straightforward. The other way is to use the app.
Yeah, so that's new. I just heard about it a couple of days ago. Kevin Mcallister actually posted about it on Twitter just yesterday. That you can I think it's unique to PS5, but when there's a setting on a PS5 where you can auto upload your captures and they will show up in the PlayStation app on your phone. And he noticed that feature went live, I think yesterday, but then it also disappeared later in the day.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So
because I know they were rolling it out in a few test markets.
That's right. Yeah, I think they were testing it in Japan and Canada, and then I think people here in the States started to hear about it, and it worked for some people. Kevin Mcallister obviously being one of them because he posted about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I tried to set it up I got all excited. I tried to set it up for myself. It didn't work. The setting, I followed instructions, but the setting was not there on the PS5. So I tweeted to Kevin and I said, hey, I can't get this to work. The setting is not there. And that's when he pointed out to me that it disappeared for him as well. So I think they maybe rolled it out and then took it away.
Maybe some intern pressed the wrong button to roll it out to a certain market, and it's like, no, we're not doing that market yet. We're not doing the US.
We're not ready yet. But that's exciting that they're going to automatically, or you have the option to have them automatically show up on the app.
And that's for video as well. Video will sync. So it's your video captures. Yes, video and images. Now, I also want to say there is a way for non-PS5 users and, I guess PS5 users who can't get the app to do it automatically yet. You can still use the app to get your images off the PlayStation. And this is something, because I use the PS4, so the auto sync isn't going to work for me, so I don't think it's going to be available for PS4. But I still use the app. The way you do it is when you take a screenshot, rather than saving it to the hard drive on your PlayStation, it has share the image as a message. You send it as a message to someone in your contacts. Now you might be thinking like, well, I don't want to send it to someone. I want to send it to me. Well, all you do is you take the 5 minutes to make a second account and then friend yourself, and then you can send it to yourself. And you don't need to log in as that second account. You stay logged in the app on your phone as you, but it appears in the chat message between you and the other you, and you can just open the image and download it to your phone.
That is brilliant. I've never thought of that. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's so fast. It's a few buttons to kind of send it, text it to yourself, but it takes like 5 seconds versus the time it takes when you want to get the images off. You got to go get USB and all of that. And
I don't even bother with you. It's just too much trouble. I have a friend who set up a dummy Twitter account. And so he'll just share it to that to his dummy Twitter account, and then get it off of his his Twitter account from his phone, and then just save it from his phone.
That's a good one, because I do a lot of posting from my laptop, and obviously I have the PS app on my phone. But if I want to get an image and like post it on, I guess Reddit I can do from my phone. But like say for what? Oh, so making thumbnails for my live streams and for the podcast. I have
Right.
to do that on my laptop. I don't do that on my phone. So I'm doing like a 2-step or 3-step process, I guess, where I'm taking the image, sending it on the PlayStation to myself, going to my phone and getting it out of the PlayStation app, and then emailing it to myself, going to my laptop and downloading it off my email. But if I send it to myself on Twitter, if I tweet it, I can just go straight to my laptop and download it.
Oh, very cool.
So
And
that would
all
save
of
me a
that
step.
is still easier than finding a USB stick and plugging it in, and then then
Yes.
taking that over to your computer and downloading.
I actually have right here. I have a whole. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. I have a whole little jar full of USB
you got a whole
sticks.
caddy of USB
Yeah.
sticks. Yeah. There's your
Yeah.
taxes from 2007.
Yeah, it's so much easier though. Now I got the app installed, and now I'm going to do that Twitter thing. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up a Twitter. I mean, I have a Twitter account, but I don't use it, so maybe I'll just use that one. I don't even remember my login, so I'll just set up a new one, and then I can tweet them to myself, and then I can get them onto my laptop pretty easily. It's still kind of clunky. I'm glad that they're fixing it with the PS5.
Yeah, that's going to be so streamlined. I can't believe it took them so long to do this, especially in this day and age of social media and sharing. Like I can't believe it's taken them so long.
And especially with having, obviously they want people to share it, but also everything we've talked about photo mode, it gives you so much control over the image. Why wouldn't I have the extra control of getting it off the PlayStation?
Yeah.
Like, that's just, if you're going to let me do everything else. Yeah.
Sharing it with people and promoting, whatever game you're playing.
Yeah.
Just everybody wins. Yeah. So I can't wait till they streamline that. I was so excited when Kevin tweeted about that. I was like, I went to go set it up on the app, and the setting to turn it on appeared on the app. But when I went to the PlayStation 5, it wasn't there. So I was like, what's going on? So whenever that goes live, I will be all over it.
Speaking of sharing images, there is a sort of question that I have a feeling we're both going to answer the same way on this, but it doesn't hurt to ask the question. Does it count as art to capture images of a virtual world already created by another artist?
I believe the answer to that question is yes. And here's why I think it is because even though that world was created by a team of artists, they decided on the textures and the colors and the shapes and all that wireframing. You are still presenting an image through your perspective. You are presenting an image where of a moment that you uniquely found yourself in, and you're creating an image based on that, and kind of using your own creativity and the lens of your own experience and creating something based on that. And that's just the same with the real world. Like if we go out and you take a picture of a mountain and I take a picture of the same mountain, well, that mountain's there, it's pre-existing, but you've got your own perspective of how you frame it, where you stand, how far you zoom in, how close you get, and I've got my own perspective. So so yeah, I think that's why I consider it art. That's why I consider photo mode art. People who share these amazing photo mode images, I definitely consider them artists.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And it goes back to what you said at the beginning about how capturing images is about telling a story.
Yeah.
You're using what you're provided with, whether it's in the real world or in a video game world, and you are telling a unique story, a unique moment or relationship or something that is communicating something more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, yeah. And even though this game was created by somebody else, your experience in this game are unique to you, in the way you choose to approach a mission, really the way you approach anything, the way you approach taking down a horde. It's all unique to you. Do you do it by stealth? Do you do it guns blazing? Do you do it, just no shots fired, Sponicus Rex style, which is absolutely insane. I would never do that. It's you find yourself in situations that are unique to you, And I think that's what art is all about, is your perspective of the things that you see and how you present them to the world.
Well said. Real quick, you were talking about the different tactics that the game allows you. One thing that we haven't touched on, and I just want to bring it up real quick, is the little tactic of using photo mode to pause the action and see the terrain and the enemies and look around corners and see things that Deacon can't see, that you can kind of act like God for a second and just like zoom out of the action, freeze time, and just take a moment and figure out what your next move is.
I think that's brilliant. I had never seen that before, and I'd never thought of it before until I saw Sponicus Rex do it in that I think it was his breaker video, like how to take down a breaker video. And he used photo mode to kind of show you the lay of the land. It's like, okay, there's an explosive box over here around this corner. And that was the first time I had seen that. And I was like, that's brilliant. So I had never done it before that. Honestly, I'd played this game enough so many times that I kind of don't need that tool anymore. But had I thought of that in my first playthrough, I definitely would have taken advantage of that. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. It's funny, I don't use it, or I've started using it a lot more in Days Gone recently, but I didn't use it my first playthrough because I get so caught up in the action. But it is a tactic I've used in Uncharted 4, because that has it's really easy to get into photo mode in Uncharted 4. Now that came out 6 years ago. That was 2016, I think. And if I remember correctly, you just press both the sticks at the same time and it takes you into photo mode. So I would do that all the time to freeze it and look around. But for some reason with Days Gone, it just didn't occur to me to do that, because it's pausing and then going to the menu, and I just get so overwhelmed when the horde is chasing me. I'm just like, oh my god, just run.
I'm the same way. I'm so clumsy. I stream very casually on Twitch.
Oh yeah, what's your Twitch?
It's very casual. Like, you're gonna laugh when you see like my latest stream, because it's me clumsily taking down a small, I can't remember which horde it was, but it was just, it was so clumsy and just really, it was really comical how clumsy I was taking down this horde. But it's the Mike Padua, TheMikePadua. So just like my Instagram, it's the same thing. But yeah, it's just like, I clumsy is my play style. So like, I'm not the most tactical person. So it's just, I'm kind of clumsy in real life. So I'm kind of just like, you know what? I'm going to be clumsy in game too. I'm just going to fly by the seat of my pants and just like, I'm going to barely survive this encounter with 100 freakers. And that's just, I'm going to play this game the way I live my life. And that's clumsy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shit, if you enjoy it, and if it gets the job done, if you don't die, then it's all good.
Yeah. And I've tried the Sponicus Rex tactics, and I'm just way too clumsy. My timing is just way off. So it's just like, you know what? I'm just going to go in guns blazing. I'm going to thin them out from stealth using explosives. And then once there's a few left, I'm going to go in guns blazing.
Yeah.
And I'm still probably going to nearly die every time.
My favorite way to finish off a horde, I'll do a lot of like hiding in bushes, higher elevation, throwing as many things as I can because I'm just so scared to get in a gunfight. I'll do that and then I'll run away. I have discovered the MG55, and that is just fucking amazing. That gun is the best. When I have that in my hands, I have no fear. But I always finish off a horde with a melee weapon. I love using a melee weapon just to get the last 2 or 3 freaks, because then it's like, yeah, I'm not scared of you assholes, even though 5 minutes ago I was running for the hills, like looping back around.
It's so comical when you get the final hit on somebody and then you get that like complete
screen.
And
it just pops up. Yeah,
the screen just kind of pops up out of nowhere and you're just like, yeah, I did it.
The funny part for me is when you X out of that screen and Deacon will like finish his machete swing or his axe swing or fire the rest, the the shot that took out that last freak, you'll still hear it, and the freak's still standing or still like lunging towards you before they die.
Yeah, and then they crumble. They
just
to the
crumble
ground.
because you have that moment of fear of like, oh, is there still one there? And then, oh no, they're dead. The pop-up screen, I feel like, is timed wrong. It comes up a little too soon, or it's a little too abrupt.
Yeah, it is. It's weirdly abrupt. It just, like, the second you land that fatal hit, it pops up, and that just seems like a really weird. It's endearing now, but it just seems like a really weird part for it to pop up.
I would never read them. I'm only now on my 4th playthrough able to read what it says because I'm so amped up after killing a horde. I'll just be like X, 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 and let's like get rid of that screen in like almost a flurry of panic of like, no, you're blocking my view, get out of the way. Rather than being like, oh, okay, it's like it's paused. I can take a breath. I can read what it says. So for ages, I didn't read what it was telling me. Of like any, horde killer, you've hit like 60% and unlocked the MG55 or this thing. And I would just be like, X, 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 X. No, don't want to see it. Don't want to see it. I'm still in horde killing mode.
See, that screen for me is the signal that I can stop holding my breath. So it's like, it's just absolute relief when I hear that, that sound, and then the screen goes black, and it's like, oh god, I did it. Like,
yes,
I can like...
and like you can blink again because I don't blink for the longest time. I'm like, oh, why do my eyes hurt?
It's like, oh, why am I out of breath? Oh, it's because I haven't been breathing for the past like 2 minutes.
Yeah. All right, one last thing I want to talk about is community members who share great photos. So we both picked out a few that we follow that share some awesome Photomode images. Do you want to talk us through yours?
Yeah. So I found a couple, and they use some concepts that we've talked about. One of my favorites, her name is Sarah Garado. And Sarah, if you end up listening to this and I mispronounce your name, I'm sorry. But on Twitter, her name is Callie Sarah 1998. And she is a great Photomode artist. And she, when was this tweet? It was on January 26th. So it was just yesterday, or longer, depending on when you're listening to this. But her captures use that color grading technique of making the shadows warm and brown and making the highlights kind of cool and kind of that teal and orange aesthetic. So that kind of action movie aesthetic, and they're really beautiful. And you can also notice how she uses that depth feature too, is the stuff in the distance is a certain color, and then the stuff that's near to you is a different color. So it all just kind of really separates that frame. So just beautiful work. One of the images is the sawmill horde at night. So just like, and there's one top down of Deacon looking down at all the freakers, and it's just like, it's just super frightening. But she uses all those concepts of making the shadows a certain color and making the highlights a different color. So she's great. Callie Sarah 1998. And then another one is, coincidentally, her name is also Callie Ocelot, on Twitter at Callie Ocelot. And she does a lot of close-up stuff. And it was this particular artist that made me realize the detail of when you can get in really close to somebody. Like, you can see all the broken blood vessels in a reacher's eyes. You can see each individual hair and each individual wrinkle. You can see like the screamer's teeth and stuff. It's just crazy. So she does a lot of like close-up stuff. And then another one that I really like is Photomode Addict.
I follow them on Instagram. They're on Twitter, and I follow them on Instagram. They're awesome. And
it's so funny. Like he posted they posted a close-up of Deacon's face, and Sam Witwer responded to it. It was hilarious. He said, because you can see every pore and every wrinkle and every hair. And Sam Witwer said, "My skin is so much more baby soft than this image implies." So, and that was hilarious that Sam Witwer found this image and was, gracious enough to reply to it with with a funny joke. So
Yeah.
it's awesome. So,
Yeah.
and then of course there's Kevin Mcallister.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows who he is. Viking Dad 278. He was a super fan, and then as many of your listeners probably know, he started working for Bend. So yeah, I mean, he does a lot of games. Like I think he hasn't been posting, or that Horizon game is not out yet. But
Right.
but yeah, I mean, he just posts a lot of stuff from The Last of Us, and just great stuff. So Kevin McAllister, and his Twitter handle is VikingDad278.
Mm-hmm. The ones I follow, I don't really use Twitter, so I follow people on Instagram. One of my favorites is It's Unanimous Captures, and they
Yes.
do the ones I'm going to recommend are less so like, I mean, they're obviously all skilled photographers, but the ones that capture my attention are the ones that take very they have a very different point of view, or an interesting point of view. And It's Unanimous Captures, they do kind of film poster style edits to the photos. They'll take a really, really fucking cool image, and like they are excellent at capturing the image from the game. But what they'll do is they'll cut out certain parts of it to like create like a silhouette, and they'll do like I call it a triptych. I don't think that's the exact proper use of that term, but
No,
they'll
that's
do like,
exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is. That's correct.
yeah, 3 panels with like
Mhm.
3 different, and it tells, like, say, it tells that story. So they'll have like, Deacon in one and a Reacher in the other, and then a shot of Deacon and the Reacher together, or something like that. They'll kind of create that relationship between them. They're fucking excellent. And they're followed by Ben Studio, which I think is a pretty big deal.
Huge deal. Yeah, it's awesome.
And they put text on it sometimes. So it'll say, Deacon St. John, the Drifter, almost like they're creating like comic book characters or something, or movie posters. So that is really, really cool. I love their images. Another good one is Shots with Boozer. It's shots _ Boozer. They also have another Jim Appreciation, which is like a appreciation of Jim Pirry, who played Boozer. But Shots with Boozer is all just images of Boozer, and just like the different captures that you can get of him, and like the cool emotional moments, and just how badass he looks. And they do a lot of stuff with really awesome lighting that blows me away. I'm like, how did they get this? Like, where is this lighting in the game? I don't even know how sometimes they get these images, but that one's definitely worth checking out. And then my last one is actually not Days Gone at all. It's an Instagram account called Joel's Broken Watch. Joel's broken watch. And it's all The Last of Us. But the way the images they capture are always just so poignant. They're so emotional. And every time I see them, I always stop. When I'm scrolling through Instagram, every single time I stop and I'm like, whoa, that is fucking cool. And I'm like, what? Which account is this? And it's always Joel's Broken Watch. Every time.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's Joel's Broken Watch. I should know by now. It's Joel's Broken Watch. Again, they don't do Days Gone, but they do awesome photo mode captures that probably use a lot of the things we discussed today, because they're top notch. But the way they capture, the images they capture, the relationships and the stories that they're telling with the captures blows my mind every time.
Yeah, it's beautiful, just poignant stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Mike. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been such a good conversation. I learned so much.
Yeah, I thank you so much for having me. It's so awesome to be able to talk to another Days Gone fan. After when I discovered Days Gone, and it had been out for over a year, and I felt like I was alone in my love for it. But then, I discovered the communities out there on Facebook. And again, when I found your podcast, I reached out to you, and I was like, oh my God, if you ever need a guest, I'll I'll come on. And just like, it's so much fun to talk about this game. I have many favorite games, but in this last generation of consoles, and even this current generation of consoles, it's easily has become my favorite game.
Yeah.
So the most memorable game that I've ever played. And I'm still playing it, like I intend to just keep playing it. And I don't see myself getting tired of it anytime soon. So it's a real pleasure to talk to you and yeah, it's so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, well, like I said, thank you for coming on. This is why I started the podcast, was because I was in the same boat. I found the game 2 years after it came out. No, I didn't know anyone who was playing it. It was not on my radar. It wasn't on any of my friends' radar. And I played it and just blew my fucking mind. I'm like, I've got to talk to someone about this.
I thought I was just going to blast zombies for a few hours and then it was going to be some fun.
Yeah, drive a bike, blast some zombies, done.
Yeah. And it's like all of a sudden I'm riding to Lost Lake and A Soldier's Eyes is playing, and why am I crying? It's just like it's just an amazing game. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you reached out. I'm glad we connected. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that you'll be back and we'll talk again about Days Gone.
Anytime. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, here are the usual reminders. Every morning at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, you can watch me live stream my Survival 2 Fresh Start playthrough. I take on hordes, talk shit about rippers, and lay waste to ambush camps, all before I've had my morning cup of coffee. You can find me on my YouTube channel, just search for Days Gone Podcast. Also, don't forget to subscribe to see the ambush camp, horde takedown, and blooper reel videos I've recently been uploading. On Tuesdays, I invade the Spornicus Rex YouTube channel for a collaborative live stream playthrough of Days Gone. He goes into advanced gameplay tactics and strategy, and I discuss the story, characters, and all the amazing details of the game. You can find us live on the Spornicus Rex YouTube channel every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific. You can support the Days Gone podcast by leaving a review or giving us a thumbs up. That really helps the algorithm do its thing so more people can find the show. You can also show your support by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/daysgonepod, where you can throw a little money in the tip jar if you're feeling generous. That really helps me with the overhead costs of running the show. You can email me your thoughts, comments, opinions, and counter-arguments at daysgonepod@gmail.com. You can also find me moderating the Days Gone subreddit. Thanks for listening. Weaver out.